Hey y'all, Myra here, and I want to invite you to Black Women Healing Podcast 5-year anniversary happening next Saturday in Compton, California. And there is a little bit of a fee, but that's for the purpose. So it will be catered. We will have live performances. We have dope goodie bags and all around just a good time. We'll even have some vendors so you can shop around if that's your thing. Get ready for fall, bring in some new things, and just vibe out with us and celebrate me and Danica 5 years of Black Women Healing Podcast.
Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real. You just gotta take your time, unwind and chill. Cause now it's time to love yourself, build emotional and mental health. Cause Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real.
Hey y'all, we are back with another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast, and today we have a special guest. But before we introduce our special guest, we're going to start with the This or That segment, and this just popped in my head, and it's very relevant. So thinking of This or That, do you all prefer plays or movies?
Oh, you know what I'm gonna pick, Danica. I think you would know what I'm gonna pick if you really know me.
I do.
It's always gonna be a play for me. I am not a movie I try so hard to be a movie person. I was in the movies last night asking my boyfriend, when is this gonna be over? And then it had 30 more minutes, and I was like, can we just leave? I'm not into movies. But plays, it's like they're right there. I'm more into it. I know we're gonna have an intermission if I need a little wiggle break because my ADHD be getting to me. So
That's true.
it's gonna have to be a play. It's a little bit more. It does it for me. But in Inglewood, there's this place called the Cosm that just opened up, and that might change the game for me. It's a place where it's a fully immersive experience, and so that might change how I think about like movies and even TV. Like sometimes I'm into TV, sometimes I'm not. So y'all check out the Cosm and you tell me about it. But Danica, what about you?
I haven't heard of this. Yeah, that immersive experience in Inglewood. But for me, it just depends on, like, I am a movie person. I'll go to the movies by myself, like a matinee, good old matinee in the middle of the day, and have a good grand time by myself. But I feel like plays just, it's just more emotion. It feels more personable. Like it just feels more real. Like you really can embody it when you are at a play. I can't, and like you said, that break, that's important to announce, because I didn't even think about that. Having a break to even process what you've seen or what you just heard. Because every time we go to a play, it's that middle, like our little intermission, we're always like, girl, did you see that? Like, did you pick this up and that? And so when you're watching a movie, you don't get that until the end, unless you want to talk, but then you're going to miss something. So I think I would say, if I had to pick, I'm going to say movie, just because it sounds like I'm going to say play, but I'm going to say movie just because I watch movies more though. Because it's more easily accessible. Like if I watch a play, I don't want to watch it on my TV typically. I want to see it in person. And so movie is like, it's just there. So
Danica, you just gave me a flashback to my childhood. Oh my gosh. I don't know about where you're from if they do this, but our bootleg man used to sell the Medea plays. And my dad
everywhere.
used to buy okay.
Everywhere.
And that was like a whole thing where we would sit around and watch
it. And you know, those are good. But imagine if we were feeling, because you know, a lot of it was like the gospel music and like really like, you know, leaning onto Christianity and God. But like imagine watching that in person. If we were feeling that through the screen and listening to the folks sing, and you would be like, dang, like, okay, imagine watching that in person. But yeah, no, where I'm from, Tyler Perry had the streets on lock with those plays. What about you, Deborah?
Wow. Well, the funny thing is you're talking to a television and film person. So I create television and film. I also write plays as well. So I will have to go with film and TV because that's what I do. That's what I love. That's what I'm passionate about, obviously. But I have written. I just finished writing and co-producing a play called Martin Luther King and the Motown Sound. and it was how the civil rights movement is connected to um, Motown music. So that was an extraordinary experience too. So I love all the art forms, but I'm gonna have to go with film.
Yes, as you all can see, we have a special guest. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. So, Deborah Jane Burke is a dynamic filmmaker, writer, and producer. She has a vibrant Hollywood career, having worked with networks including Fox, TBS, BET, and PBS. Deborah Jane's current project is the independent film Strange Fruit, the Hip-hopera. It's not just a film, it's a modern approach to storytelling in which Black people tell their own stories to ignite critical conversations about race in our country. She credits her creativity, music, and the arts with giving her purpose in her work. So, like, as you can hear, Deborah Jane Burke has been doing it up. Today, the topic we're actually going to be speaking about is trauma of learning about the history of Black people in America and how it shapes us as Black women. So, just to get our listeners on board, so we learned a little bit about you through the bio, but we wanted just to know, like, let's get to know you a little bit better. Like, how did you get to even doing these amazing things?
First of all, where do we begin? Okay, so I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a reader. I've always been a writer. I started writing when I was 12 years old. My dad had built me a playhouse in our backyard. I grew up in Orange County, and my parents are immigrants from Guyana, and so we lived in a predominantly white suburb, although we were the only Black family on the block, and so sort of the extreme experience of that, I'm sure, triggered my imagination in many ways. But I was always a voracious reader. I was a voracious writer. I was always writing songs and little stories and all that in my playhouse as a kid. So it really began at 12. But the other thing that impacted me in my youth was because I wasn't surrounded by a diverse community or any type of diversity at all. I was constantly like searching for my roots and looking for like some sort of similar culture to me. So I would often be in the library. I used to beg my mom to take me to the library, and I would just be reading and reading and reading. And what I would read is anything I could find on African American culture and history. So I started reading slave narratives at 12 years old. And that is definitely not bedtime story reading, but it definitely I just was, I couldn't stop reading what I was, and I was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. I couldn't believe that this was the America that I live in, that it once was like that. So I was both horrified and fascinated by our American history. And so what that did is it triggered my imagination. Night after night, I would have these nightmares. And the nightmare was me having been transported back into the 1800s and I was a slave. And the big question was, what would I do? And I would usually wake up screaming. And my mom would come in and she would be like, what is wrong with my kid, or what's wrong with you? And I just was like, this nightmare like haunted me for years. And it actually it also traveled with me when I went to college. So I went to Stanford University, and that's where I actually took a class called hip-hop theater, or actually it was called social protest drama. And it was a class that used hip-hop theater and storytelling, drama, hip-hop, to create revolutionary theater, speaking of plays. And I knew that was my calling. I knew I needed to tell story using these dynamic elements. So at Stanford, I wrote my first play, and I knew the story that I needed to tell. I knew that it needed to be a story, my nightmare. I knew it needed to be my nightmare. So I basically wrote my nightmare as a hip hop musical, and it was called the Hip-hopera, Strange Fruit, the Hip-hopera, the play version. And then I went about producing it, and it was my first time ever producing anything. So I at that level, I guess. Well, not anything, but at that level. And so I raised $8,000. I won grants. I went from department to department, went to the president of school, basically pitching my play and saying, please give me money. And they did. And so we produced it. And at that point, Stanford didn't have a lot of diverse plays going on at that point. Things are probably different now. And so that was also an impetus. And so we had like about 30 students who were actors or singers, dancers, and they were African American. So it was this big black play, honey. And we also had Issa Rae. She starred in it. At that point, she was a freshman back at that time. So I directed her. And that was, who knew, it was the beginning of, an extraordinary career. And so we put it on. We got a standing ovation. And I remember taking a bow. And I remember as I took a bow, the Holy Spirit whispered in my ear, this is just the beginning. And so that's when I knew I want and need to do this in real life, professionally. After that, I jumped into Hollywood. When I graduated, I just jumped into Hollywood, started from the bottom, trying to get in. So I started as a PA, production assistant. That's like the lowest on the totem pole, scrubbing floors and doing all this on sets, just get on a set. And did what I had to do, focused on the writing aspect since I've always been a writer, studied screenwriting, eventually went to USC where I got my master's in screenwriting. And that's when I took the play, rewrote it as a feature film. After graduation, I launched my company, House of Deborah Jane Studios, and we focus on, like that hip hop theater class, we focus on telling dynamic narratives with women of color as the protagonists, as championing diverse voices, but through like revolutionary musical style, especially hip hop. And so our maiden voyage is Strange with Hip-hopera as a feature film, and we've been on that voyage ever since. So that is the story.
That is super dope. The first time I was introduced to anything like this was Carmen, right, with Beyonce. And so hearing about this and hearing you take a deeper dive, I'm like, there's a whole world out there that I feel like I need to expose myself to a little bit more. But what stood out for me was you mentioning growing up as a Black immigrant in a predominantly white suburb. And so I'm curious how this shaped your worldview, right? Because as you're even presenting to me, I see the ring, I see the jewelry, I see the glasses, I see the colorful shirt. It speaks hip hop. And so when I think about being in a predominantly white neighborhood, that does not come to my mind, right? Yes, bomb. So I want to hear a little bit more how it shaped your worldview.
Oh man, hip hop saved my life. The OC is not known for its hip hop community in any respect at all. And so hip hop gave me a voice, especially growing up in this predominantly white suburb, which it was not diverse. It's very, very, it's like the Truman Show. That's what Orange County is like. And so we were this only Black family on the block. I made my first Black friend at Stanford. And so I was like really like looking for some sort of voice that represented my culture and also what is my culture. I as Guyanese, Caribbean, I'm in a Guyanese Caribbean immigrant household, but also supposed to be African American. What does that mean? I'm receiving stereotypes from various teachers and folks who expect me to act a certain way, and this and that. So I was like really, really seeking. So, and I grew up listening to, white pop girls. So I grew up listening to, Gwen Stefani and Avril Lavigne and Kiss FM. And that's all I knew. And then suddenly my siblings one day, or somehow we discovered 92.3 The Beat. I don't know how we did it. Maybe we turned the dial just a little too far. I don't know what happened, but it was this beat coming out of the radio. And I remember hearing Busta Rhymes, bust the bus, and it was like where your eyes could see, and I was like, what is this? You know what I mean? And I felt this electric energy just come through me. I started dancing in my living room with my glasses on, like I was a straight nerd, but I was just like, do the bus, and so like hip hop just entered into my life, and I was like, hip hop for life after that. I was like, this is the way I'm gonna have a voice or discover who I am. So I founded a hip hop dance team in high school. I was all about that life. And then when I discovered hip hop theater in college, it was like another element of hip hop. And then later on in my career, I discovered that I could rap. I didn't know I could rap. And so I knew I could write. I knew I could write and I knew I could dance, but I didn't know that I also was an MC. One of the ways that probably came about for me was Lauryn Hill. My father brought me the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill for my 16th birthday. I listened to that. I wore that entire CD out completely. Like I would over and over and over study all the lyrics, this and this and this, and she was incredible to me because she was able to tell a woman's story, her story, incorporate spirituality, incorporate extraordinary lyricism, metaphors, majestic imagery, powerful messaging, innovative style, be like one of the only women, definitely the only woman that I knew doing it that way, right? In a predominantly male dominated musical genre. And I wanted to be like her. And so yeah, when I discovered I could rap, I just started writing raps. And and it took me a while to accept myself as an MC because I'm from Orange County and I have zero street cred at all. And so I was like, am I even allowed to be an MC? You know what I'm saying? Like, I really struggled to accept this identity, but God really led me to study hip hop, study the craft of it, study this craft of rapping and delivery and style and swag and lyricism. So I'm serious about the craft, and led me to record my first album. So I recorded my first album, my debut album. It's on Spotify. My rap name is Retro Raptress because I'm hella vintage as well. I'm like a pinup girl who raps. And so it's Retro Raptress. And my album's called Who is Retro Raptress? Like Who is Jill Scott, but Who is Retro Raptress? And that's where I got to put all my style together, the way I rap, the lyricism, the storytelling, the cinematic aspects, all in one album, because that's who I am. And I realized I can be myself in this hip hop genre and innovate and pioneer my way. And there's room for me if we just make room. So that's so hip hop plays such a strong role in everything I do. And it's definitely inspired by the OC. One of my songs on my album is literally called The OC, and it's about this experience.
I love that.
Wow.
I love the fact too that you stay true to yourself. You haven't tried to change your narrative. I think sometimes you'll see that where people are like, trying to change where they came from, or try to take one little small experience and try to make that the reason. Yeah. Like your story is true to you. Like you say, you even have a song called OC.
Oh,
like, but it's you, and it doesn't mean. And also this piece of, like you're talking about, studying and learning more about the history, that's because like you just said, like, can I even do this? Yes, you can, because it still is a part of your history. Like, and that's why it probably feels so tied to you. Like you said, even it's so interesting how we listen to our music, and like you're saying, you hadn't even really heard that, but it's just something that came over you in your body that just moves you because it's a part of you,
Mm-hmm.
So I love that.
Yes, absolutely. And I realize that the thing that's so precious about hip hop is the core of it is authenticity, right? The core of it is authentic brown and black voices expressing themselves, as to when it's, began in Brooklyn and even has Caribbean roots. This is what it is. And so I figured, listen, if I'm going to be hip hop, then I have to be extremely authentic, and the authentic Debbie is from suburbs, hello, authentic Debbie is from the OC. And so I am not straight out of Compton at all. And so I gotta, if I'm going to be hip hop, I gotta be very, very truthful. And so that's why I was like, let me write about the OC.
Yes, I love that. Can you explain your perspective on how the traumas of learning the history of Black people in America shapes us as Black women? I'm very curious about that.
Yes. Okay. So, the history of African American people in this country, as we all know, is sordid, and it is for me, I'm very proud of our African American history because I'm proud of us as people for having endured all of it. Okay? Black people in this country went through almost 400 years of slavery, then followed that up with Reconstruction and the prison system becoming the new slavery, then followed that up with more decades of Jim Crow segregation, then followed that up with our current level of police brutality against your Trayvon Martins and your George Floyds and everybody else. That's what's been coming against us since Black people were stolen here from Africa. So, who we've become in that entire process is extraordinary, almost superhero-like, because we've had to build our own culture while constantly being oppressed, abused, questioned, degraded, and violently hurt as well, too. So what's the trauma? I do think there is generational trauma. I do think there is actual PTSD associated with this. One of the things I read when I was studying slavery was the Willie Lynch papers. You may have heard of those. But that's where they really broke down the psychology of how to keep slavery going and going and going. And they said, we have to use the Black woman to keep it going and going and going. How do we do that? So in the Willie Lynch papers, they break down how to traumatize the Black woman into a state of frozenness. So what they would do is they would violently abuse the Black man in front of the Black woman, maybe whip him to death, lynch him, mutilate him, any type of thing like that. They would do, and it would be her husband, maybe her father, her brother, her son, or some man that she might see as a protector. And they would violently abuse that man in front of her face. That would send her into a psychological state of frozenness in terms of, I'm not protected. There is no Black man who can protect me. Because at that point, they didn't want her to feel there was any type of Black man that could protect you, because then y'all might unite and overthrow this system. So basically, she was put into a psychological state of frozen independence. Nobody's going to protect me. I got to do everything myself. It's just me, myself, and I. And what they did then, they knew that since the woman is the first teacher of the child, the Black woman would then teach her daughters to be like her, independent, don't need any, don't depend on no men. This is that. You're the only one out here for you. And she would teach her sons to do whatever it took to not be brutalized like that. So, keep your head down and don't come up against the white master. And so this was how they could keep the cycle going of slavery for hundreds of centuries. They used the Black woman, the matriarch, to be the teacher of the messages that they wanted to be given to Black people. That's no fault of Black women at all. That's a trauma response. So today, I do still see that like super independence from Black women as a culture. That idea that we single, we out here, we don't need no men. That you hear it in songs, you hear it in music, you hear it all over the place. It's there, and I'm being general. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule, but breaking up the unit was the point, right? Breaking up the Black man and Black woman unit was the point, because together there's this extraordinary strength and power. And I would say one of the ways we see that is in the strong Black woman trope. I think, yes, we are strong and beautiful and wonderful, but we are also have not been allowed to be vulnerable, to fall in somebody's arms, to need help, all that sort of stuff. I love the fact that this generation is championing the soft life. Yes, Black women have needed to be given the permission to have a soft life, But for centuries, we were not, because for centuries, we were having to hold down all the families in the face of extraordinary abuse. So the still psychological independent frozenness of, I can't be soft. I can't allow anybody to see that I'm hurt. I can't get help. There's no man who's going to take care of me. There's no man who's going to treat me like a queen, this and that and third. No one's going to roll out the red rose petals for me. That mentality is still in the community, and I believe it needs to be healed drastically. I think the soft life approach is one route to that, but it needs to be continued in drastic. We are women, right? We're women, and we need to be allowed to be women, all in our sensitivity, in our vulnerability, in our softness, in our allowance, and in our openness. We're not supposed to be fighting all the time and fighting everyone all the time. That's not what we're supposed to. That's a trauma response. We're not supposed to be doing that. Yes, we're going to fight, but also we should be able to sit down and put our feet up and have somebody rub our feet and know that we're being taken care of.
Yes to all that. Soft life me every day. Me and Danica are always in conversation about what soft life looks like for us in the season that we're in. So whether it be soft life in the work setting, in the home setting, in relationship. Yes. I think we all need to be thinking about that.
Need it. And also, I would say sometimes because we've had to be so strong Black women for so long, it's hard to adopt soft life. It's hard to adopt those attributes of femininity, which are openness, receiving, trusting is the one, allowing, right? That we have historically not been given room and permission to do that because we've been fighting for survival for so long. And so now in this day and age where there is this movement, for some women, especially women of older generations, they may find it challenging to adopt it, right? So allowing ourselves to even be soft is us allowing ourselves to be healed.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I'm loving this conversation, and it's definitely needed. I think that's a whole nother episode right there, for real, like getting into that. But in thinking of you personally, what are some ways that you handle racism and or sexism when it's implicit or explicitly towards you?
Yeah, so I think for me, because I've studied racism, studied the colonialism behind it, the mindset behind it, I see it structurally, implicitly, explicitly. It's woven into the DNA of our country. It's all around us, almost like air. So because of that, one of the ways I deal with it is I'm very aware of it, and I've learned to be able to point it out or be able to extract it from what people are saying or this and that. So awareness is the first thing for me. Secondly, sometimes I confront it. During the Black Lives Matter movement, I was definitely on the front lines, and I was speaking to crowds, and I was talking about racial reconciliation, which is the mission of my film, Strange Fruit, the Hip-hopera, racial reconciliation. And so I was preaching that. And basically, I desire to enlighten and educate people. Now, I don't feel it's my job to educate people. I just want to, right? Because I want to elevate, enlighten, and educate people on how racism works and how it's implicitly woven into so many things, so that people can start to decolonize and deconstruct their own minds and be able to start healing from it, whether you are a person who has perpetrated it or you are a person who has received it. And so the other way, obviously, is creatively. My film Strange Fruit, the Hip-hopera, follows a modern day African American woman. So it's my nightmare. Follows a modern day African American woman. Think like a Kamala Harris type. Very spitfire, on point, successful, and ambitious. And she travels back in time into the 1800s to rescue her ancestor from a lynching. She does all this to lift the curse off of her interracial marriage, because her husband, who is white, it's his ancestor that lynched her ancestor. So she's doing all of this for love and to lift the curse off her family and all of this. So it's a very epic tale. And then we tell it through hip hop music and dance and storytelling. So it's like, I always say it's like 12 Years a Slave meets Hamilton. So this feature film is one of the main ways I'm confronting racism, by literally putting it in a story with characters and music, so that our country, when it comes out in theaters, can digest this in a way that and shows how it actually impacts our families and everything like that, and what we can do to create a new future moving forward. So that is, like a life mission for me. Yeah.
Wow. Can I just say, I find it so intriguing when you have a creative brain that can be so creative in this aspect, but bring so much historical context in it, educate, push people to think. That always like blows my mind. I tell my boyfriend that all the time because he's super creative too, but wow. Like, I don't know if you saw my facial expressions. I was like, what? Whoa, what? This needs to be like a book also, because I want to be able to read it myself and have my own visualizations. My brain was like, whoosh.
I hope that it becomes, the goal is for it to become a Grand Slam film, play, book, the whole thing. I see it as a message to America, a spiritual message to America. Our country needs so much healing in this area, and you can't heal something that you ignore or pretend doesn't exist or sweep under the rug or I don't want to see it or da da da. You can't heal anything you won't confront. And so what I learned at Stanford was a creative way to confront this issue, this elephant in our proverbial room, is through storytelling. One thing people can deal with is a story, and they can receive it and then digest it on their own, as opposed to like a lecture or a speech. So
yes, thank you for giving some of your tidbits of the ways that you handle racism and sexism. So I mean, you already give some, but what advice would you give to other women looking to overcome obstacles to positively impact society?
the first one is the most important thing to me, my faith. I have a strong faith in God. I'm a believer, born again believer, Christian, and I live by faith. I live by the Holy Spirit. I'm led, and God is the one who gave me these visions to even do all of this. It would take that level of spiritual fortitude to believe that you can even create a film like this. You know what I mean? And so faith is the first thing I would say, because when you are on a divine mission, you're absolutely going to face obstacles. That's going to happen. It's not even a question. And so you're going to face people not believing in you. You're going to face rejection. You're going to face betrayal. You're going to face gaslighting. You might even face manipulation. You'll face a lot of things, And so that's why it's very important to have a center of truth. And for me, that's God. In addition to that, facing obstacles, you have to believe in yourself and develop yourself. And before you go out into your destiny, ministry, career, Hollywood, whatever it is, you got to know who you are, because this world will try to tell you who you are. And usually they're lying to you. So you have to know, who am I outside of what my external is, right? So building that strong self-identity and learning to love yourself and doing whatever your therapy work is, meditation, prayer, whatever you got to do to heal from the pain and brokenness that you might have in your past, please do that, right? Because that is going to impact your ministry, your mission, and your destiny. So that's another way. And then another way, of course, is a great support system. I've been very blessed with a family that has supported me strongly, in addition to incredible friends, especially Black women. I have a strong cohort of sisters who not only believe in me, support me, and love me, but also tell me the truth. You need to have truth tellers in your life. You got to be surrounded by people who will be honest with you. and tell you things that are challenging for you to hear, so that you are willing to grow, and you're willing to correct yourself, and you're willing to humble yourself, and you're willing to do what it takes to become the best version of yourself. So I'm on that path. I'm still learning and growing and changing. I have mentors who speak in my life, who correct me and help me elevate. I speak into mentees' lives. I have sisters who come alongside me. I have folks who are not afraid to tell me the truth, and also not afraid to love me through my truth. If I'm having breakdowns, or I'm having breakups, or I'm having breakthroughs, I got people who will ride or die with me. And so I say, get you one of those.
So can you be mine? We
And
over here
mine
typing to
too.
each other. We're like, oh my gosh, let's go to lunch. We need to connect because
No, seriously.
you are speaking. You are saying all the things I feel like I need to know at this age. And so let me take it further.
Yeah, let's go to lunch. Let's do it, girls. I love that. I love speaking life into people, and I love speaking what I feel the spirit is telling me. And so, that's what's up. To become the greatest version of yourself, you gotta have that spirit.
Yes, I love that. I feel like God is working through you this morning. He always, when we need a word or we need to be connected to someone, it's so interesting how you can't run from it. It's just going to happen. And I think that's what's happening here. That's how I think about my relationship with God. So yeah, he gonna plant some people, and he's going to have those people say certain things that you need to hear. And something that you said was something that I'm oftentimes saying, because my best friend has said it to me, of I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to push you and call you out, not because I want this friendship to end, but because I want you to be a better person and a better friend to other people. Because at first I'm like, girl, don't be telling me about myself. But once I realized it's for me to become a better person, I open myself to it. And now I have other people in my life that kind of do the same thing. Like Danica will tell me real quick, if we're at a restaurant or something, why are you being rude to that person? That wasn't cool. I don't like that. And I'll be like, oh my God, okay, let me, thank you. But It's something that now I'm consciously thinking about it when I am interacting with people. How am I presenting myself? Because my friend who knows me called that out and let me know that wasn't cool. So how am I thinking about other situations? So hearing you say that was like, oh my gosh, again, somebody else is saying it. What?
you got you a real one. And yes. You guys are doing it for each other. This is how you elevate. I have a team of interns who are currently assisting in the marketing of Strange Fruit, and I'm speaking into their life. I got 7 interns from colleges around the country, and I'm speaking into their lives. I always tell them, don't go into Hollywood alone. Don't do that. Go with a tribe. Go with a posse. Go with a group of people that will elevate you, challenge you, honor you, but also correct you. Yes. Do that, and you will thrive.
Absolutely. The power of community, of authentic community, right? That's the difference.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely love that. And so as we're wrapping up, we always ask if our guests have any takeaways for our listeners, and it can be literally anything that comes to mind. What takeaways do you have?
Wow, I definitely was preaching. So I would say, since this is a podcast about healing, I would say, listen to your inner child, the inner voice in you that is longing to be heard and needs to be healed of things. Don't ignore that person, because that is who needs to be healed for you to elevate. You don't just elevate and succeed if you have accolades or good education or great job or money or even support. Your internal self has to be healed, because you will only receive what you believe you are worthy of. And if your self-worth, self-identity, self-perception is still not in alignment with who God says you are, then you can't receive the things God has for you. Not because God doesn't want to give it to you, but because you are not in alignment with who he says you are. First and foremost is your identity in Christ or in God. Your identity, once you have your identity in alignment with who God says your identity is, then you become ready to receive all that God has for you. But it's identity based first. And so that's what I would say. If there are areas in your life, as a takeaway to your guests, that you still need to heal, that you still need to address, that you need some therapy for, that you need a pastor to pray for, that you need deliverance from, don't be afraid to do that. That's your breakthrough. And that's how you can step into who you truly are to receive all that you're meant to receive. And the other takeaway, follow us on Instagram, because we want you to become part of our Strange Fruit community and join our Strange Fruit family and be a part of this conversation on racial reconciliation. So follow us at @strangefruit_hip-hopera.
Absolutely. I love everything about this episode. I feel like that, like Myra was saying, like we needed this, and I feel positive. And so I'm hoping that our listeners are feeling the same way. We're going to put all your information in our description. And yeah, like I'm hoping everybody, like, this is going to be one of those episodes that people listen to over and over, including myself. I'm here right now, but I'm going to listen to this over. I already know. And so,
praise the Lord.
Thank the Lord. And so thank you so much for being here with us today. And thanks to our listeners for listening to another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. We will see you all next Monday.
Thank you.